Today, we're fortunate to be joined by Galen McNamara. He's the CEO of Summa Silver. It goes without saying, we'll be focused on the silver market today, and Galen's going to share with us some interesting facts about his company, where they are now, and where they may be heading. Galen, welcome to Ron's Basement.
Hi, Ron. Thanks very much. I'm very glad to be on the show. I'm just looking at your background there, and I see there's a lot of interesting things in your basement that probably need a lot of conversation some other time. But I have questions for sure.
Okay, well, one of which is the silver bear. He has a blindfold on that says 85. So when silver hits $85 an ounce, Galen, we'll be sure to invite you to the party here where we'll be taking off the blindfold.
Oh, I get it now. Great. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep, yep. So
I'll be
you're
there.
you're the CEO of Summa Silver. I shared with you before we came online here. I started buying your company stock back in August. I was looking for silver in the ground in the United States with a good management team, and you checked all the boxes. Can you give us a kind of a nutshell description of the company and what you've done, and then we'll move into where you're heading?
Sure. Sure. Yeah, that sounds good. Well, I think to start, the point you made about silver in the ground in the United States is really important. And the way I think about it, I look back to the 80s when I was a kid. And back then, there was an iron curtain, and there wasn't much flow of goods or services between East or West. Then in the 90s, we had globalization. In the 2000s, we had globalization, and everyone was friends. But now, fast forward to now 2023, late 2023, and there's significant conflicts again, and I think significant conflicts brewing where I get the sense that there's a new iron curtain. So I think for metals like silver, like other things, but especially things that are critical to the green environment and good monetary metals, finding domestic sources of supply is going to become increasingly important. And that's part of where we can step in and help in a way. In that Summa Silver has two very interesting high grade silver and gold projects in the United States. One's in Nevada, one's in New Mexico. And both of these places were prolific historic producers back in the Wild West days, late 1800s, early 1900s, and hadn't really seen much modern focus or modern exploration since they shut down, 100 years ago, give or take, or 70 years ago, give or take. And, I'm a geologist. When you go into these places and apply a modern focus, you can find that there's still a lot of low hanging fruit, a lot of high grade mineralization left. So we founded this company in 2020. Since then, we've been more or less doing exploration continuously. And on both these projects, we've had some very, very strong exploration results that show there's still a lot of juice left to squeeze in both of these places.
Interesting, interesting. When I think about the overall silver market right now, and we know that silver being produced by the mines is actually decreasing, and the demand profile is, we're projected to need just an incredible amount more of silver as we go into the future. You couple that with the same time, like you said, kind of broad nationalization, countries, starting to look out for their own best interest. And then you think about Mexico, who produces 30% of the world's silver. And I think
Yeah.
it's safe to say that Mexico is becoming very mining unfriendly. When I think about Summa with these two big, and correct me if I'm wrong, past producing major deposits, incredible exploration potential, adding, the ability to add more and more ounces in the ground. It feels like to me that the prospects are exciting. And then couple that with, again, what you said, if the market, we've been kind of suffering through a period of challenging sentiment in both the metals and especially the mining stocks, and in particular the junior mining stocks, that could be a setup for some great returns in the future.
Yeah, I think that's 100% correct. And I look at we've had some pretty bad sentiment in the mining stocks over the last, years. But in my experience, when it turns on quickly. And what I think will happen is that we'll have a lot of new entrants into the market that realize that they are totally, totally underweighted in precious metals, currently owning zero. And maybe they want to own somewhere between 1% and 10%. I mean, even that, from the generalist institutional investors, for a market that is as small as silver, that's a really, that could be very, 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 very strong for the markets and cause some very significant rallies for a lot of these mining stocks, a lot of these silver companies, because, hey, look, I mentioned before I was a geologist, right? Well, listen, good deposits of anything are hard to find. Good silver deposits are very, very rare. Good high-grade silver deposits are even harder. And good high-grade silver deposits in good jurisdictions in the United States, I mean, you're starting to kind of tick boxes that, increase in rarity with every one that you tick. And, we're blessed in that we've secured two of these places, and not every ounce is created equally when you think of when you're a miner. Ounces in different jurisdictions have different values, or an ounce of silver or gold in Nevada, that's good grade and technically good, and all other things being equal, is probably a lot higher value, a lot more value than, just to throw out some random jurisdiction, then it's a lot higher value than like an ounce in, say, I don't know, Antarctica or something like that, right? That just makes sense intuitively. But there's a whole other set of reasons why you want to own resources like that. But, just from a very high level, that's where I want to be, is in good Western jurisdictions where property rights still mean something,
Let me ask you a quick question. Are the projects on private land, or are they located on public land? And what difference would that make?
Yeah. Well, both of them are a mix of both, but the core of the silver zones, the silver and gold zones on both projects, are on private land. So, to give you an example, like in Nevada where we were working, private land is very, very valuable in that we didn't even require any drill permits to begin exploration drilling on our project. Private land versus public land are two totally different things, and the private land on these projects goes back to the beginning, where they're patented mining claims. A lot of them were staked going back to the 1800s in the case of New Mexico. But still, it is more advantageous to have private land for obvious reasons. But still, in a place like Nevada, public land, it's still, I think, still very good or very fine in that, there's clear permitting processes that, if you do what you say you're going to do and you do things correctly, respect communities, respect the environment, there's permitting processes that I think, companies are going to be successful. But on the other hand, if you go in there and act like a Yahoo, it's going to be a little different.
Absolutely. So, as I think about Summa, and you're exploring, and I think it's safe to say developing these deposits, working towards a resource in the ground, and I compare that to a company, let's say a silver mining company right now that's actually producing silver. From a strategic perspective, and I'd like to hear your opinion on this. I am more interested in a company doing what you're doing, which is growing and developing these ounces in the ground, as opposed to a producer who right now, a silver producer is fighting just to break even, and at the same time burning through their pipeline of future ounces that they can mine. And because they're not generating right now much profit or cash flow, maybe even neglecting that pipeline. So when you look out, let's say 5 years from now, and we hear about the demand profile for silver, and we know that there's a limited number of companies that are doing what you're doing right now, developing and growing these resources. Do you feel like it could be a good setup? A good setup for the company? I mean, at some point, the silver is going to have to come from somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. And, like I was saying before, the rarity of good deposits is something that is a problem for the industry, but it's a good thing for a company like ours. And I look at in the past and in my experience when we switch into a bull market, a lot of times these smaller explorers, the successful ones, run a lot harder than the majors. And I'm not saying that you should own one over another. I like to diversify just like anyone else, but I think if you're into silver, you're into gold, you definitely want to have some exposure to some of the smaller some of the smaller miners, excuse me, because you can just see such substantial upsides in some of these quality stocks, and discovery can really change the story for a company and change the fundamentals for a company. That being said, hey, like rising tides lift all boats, but in bull markets, a lot of times the silver juniors are much more leveraged than the majors.
Let's focus in on your two projects, the Hughes project in Nevada. Give us a kind of a background. I know you touched on it earlier, but the history of that project and why you're excited about the work that's going on there right now.
Yeah, sure. So this project is located in central Nevada. It's halfway between Reno and Las Vegas on the highway. We have the eastern half of the historic Tonopah mining district and its eastern extensions from an exploration perspective. So this was the second largest silver producer in Nevada, produced something like 175 million ounces of silver and almost 2 million ounces of gold at really high grades of like 1,200 grams per ton silver equivalent. Like today, that would be like, really, really money-making rock. But again, kind of petered out in the 1920s, shut down by 1950, and was forgotten about for decades and decades and decades. So we acquired that project when the company started in 2020. Since then, have more or less been diligently drilling away. And even though it's been 70 or 80 years since production shut down there, we made two brand new discoveries this summer on an extension of the district, where one hole hit 3 meters of 1,450 grams per ton silver equivalent in a brand new vein, and another hole hit 1.5 meters of about 400 grams per ton silver equivalent, not only in a brand new vein, but on a total Hail Mary hole 4 kilometers east of the district or something like that. So, well, why does that matter? Well, I mean, we're right along trend. These holes are right along trend from one of the best American silver districts ever worked. And the only holes that we drill are hitting, So for us as geologists, that gets us really excited. Now we know that those results demand significant follow-up.
Wow. So it's not the drilling that you're doing there isn't just to further define the metal that is in the ground. You're expanding the reach and obviously with that the potential for even more ounces being found is very exciting. What about the project in New Mexico?
Wait, before we move on, oh, sorry, Ron, before we move on. Well, yeah, like for us, that's the whole point. Tonopah produced 175 million ounces back in its heyday. Where's the next 175 million ounces? That's how we think. That's what we're looking for.
Okay. Very exciting. And then there's a project in New Mexico, but wait, there's more. There's now a second project in New Mexico, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And the project in New Mexico is called Mogollon, the largest historic silver producer in New Mexico. And for me, this is a really exciting opportunity in that there's miles and miles and miles of unexplored vein field, where we have just drilled something like half a kilometer of vein, and there's 77 kilometers of vein on the project, largely unexplored. Even where we have drilled, just on that, 1% of the potential, we're hitting numbers like 34 meters of 450 grams per ton silver equivalent, et cetera, where I just see the potential, the big picture potential, being so great. And we can go and take samples more or less all over the project that run thousands of grams per ton silver equivalent at surface, never drilled. We have some data from some underground mines, thousands of grams per ton, just to very shallow levels. No drilling underneath that. So what we're going to be doing here in mid-November is going back to that project and doing some, what I like to say, surgical precise drilling, where we can step out from where we know there's mineralization and start to show some scale. Like again, on this project where we're made or break or broken is there potential for 100 plus million ounces on the project? And if there is, let's show a path to that. So we can kind of come out to the markets and to the public and say, hey, here's what we think is here, and we've got the evidence to show why we think it's here.
Interesting, interesting. And on both of the projects, they were both past producing mines, correct?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
so they're considered brownfield projects. Is there a benefit in that as well? I mean, and I would think that from a permitting perspective, it's a little easier to permit a brownfield mine than a fresh greenfield project.
I wouldn't say it's that. I think the permitting is rigorous no matter what the situation is, as it
Hmm.
probably as it should be,
Sure.
in any of these places, and especially any first world jurisdiction. But where it is advantageous is from a discovery potential view, where there's this saying in mining. It's like, and it's really simple. The best place to find a new mine is right next to the old mine, right? For whatever reason, that's just the way it always works. So, like, to be honest with
Right.
you, like, discovery is already hard enough. It's really hard.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of increase your chances by looking close to where there's something significant and it hasn't been explored around it, because a lot of places that's already been done, then you give yourself the best shot at success.
Right. Right. Yeah. It wouldn't be cost effective for me to drill through my basement floor here in St. Louis because there's no there hasn't been any silver discovered in this area for a while.
That's
Um,
right. Probably not. Probably not a good idea. Not a good investment.
no, no. Let's talk about the company's capital structure, if you don't mind shifting gears for a second, because that
Sure.
was another factor that really attracted me was when I added up between what Eric Sprott owns in your company, which is always a good vote of confidence, plus inside ownership, I came to just under 45%. Um, how do you feel in terms of what you own and the other managers own?
Yeah.
That you have a real vested interest in the company and the success of the company.
Well, I mean, I feel good. I feel like I don't own enough, which is probably a good thing, but
Yeah.
you know, it's a significant enough position where, it very much matters, which is very important. And,
Hmm.
vested success, of course, and alignment with shareholders really is how I try to position myself. So, Mr. Sprout owns a little over 18%. Yeah, he's been a big investor, big supporter all the way since the beginning. But I think for us, like, I look at our share structure, we've got a little over 100 million shares outstanding now, which gives us a market cap of around, say, $40 million. We're in a good position, but I look to the future and I ask myself, okay, if there's ends up being down the line, if there ends up being 100 plus million ounces on each of these projects, what's that worth? And I think it's worth a lot more than where we are now.
Yeah, I wanted to convey this to our viewers right now. Many of my viewers are, excuse me, are silver stackers. They like to own silver and hold it in their hands. And when I
Yeah,
think about your company, um, and when I own the stock like I do, I feel like I own a lot of silver in the ground, right? Like you're storing it in a vault. You're not burning through it. You're actually adding to the amount of silver that's in the ground. And when you
yeah,
do the math on potential, 100 million or 200 million or more ounces of silver that you could ultimately define, and you factor that into a per ounce level, let's just say it's well below $1 per ounce of
yes,
silver. And
yes,
and that silver in the United States and the safest, probably the two best states in the United States to own silver. And again, what excites me about it is the prospect of knowing that there's a first class geological team working on this, and that there's just tremendous opportunity for that resource to grow. Do you feel like sometime in the next 2 years, year or so, you may declare like an official resource number?
You know what? That's a question I get quite a bit. And well, before let me answer that first, and then I'll move on to another
Okay.
part of the question there. And that, I think it's really important for us to get the timing right on the resource and the number right on the resource, because when you put out a mineral resource, there's a perception that it's a finish line. but really it's
Mhm.
only a start line, because anything that gets put out, I mean, it's going to be open to more growth. There's going to be more targets. So I'm really sensitive to timing, and timing on that and market conditions matter. I've seen a few resources come out from similar companies that, similar companies like ours that, yeah, they were pretty strong, very strong even, I would say, but for whatever reason, it just ended up being a liquidity event for people who were looking for volume to sell into. And
Mhm.
that is something I want to avoid. That is
Sure.
something I think very hard to avoid. So, what's the timeline? Well, the answer is I don't know yet, but we're going to keep drilling until we think that it's very large. Put it that way. And then the second thing that comes back to, hey, owning ounces for less than $1 in the ground or whatever the number is.
Mhm.
The way I look at it is, how much does it cost us to discover each ounce? And I think that, our goals are to have it well under $1, even well under 50 cents an ounce. And I ask myself, okay, when I think about how much it costs to drill each hole, I say, okay, well, instead of how much it costs to drill each hole, how many ounces does each hole add? And therefore, what's the discovery cost per ounce? And I want that to be well under 50 cents.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm as you're speaking, I'm thinking, I hear investors in the precious metals market all the time say how underpriced silver is if they want to go buy an ounce for $22, $23 per ounce. But what I'm
Yeah.
thinking is how astonishingly inexpensive you can buy silver in the ground for right now. And I really
Sure.
believe that. And, as the market dynamics change, let's say in the next 2, 5, 10 years, maybe 2 months, but that might be rushing it.
Yeah.
If things just go back to normal, and if the supply and demand factors play out like they most people predict, and makes perfect sense to me that we could be and you could be sitting in a very nice position. The other thing I want to comment on what you said is, when I asked the question about when are you going to declare a resource, Galen? Come on, when are you going to declare a I have this feeling that that you're too busy discovering more and more silver to like you don't want to stop. Like, let's just keep
Yeah.
we're on such a good roll. The time will come when it's more appropriate to declare a resource. Is that somewhat of an accurate statement?
Absolutely. The time will come. That's right. When it's more appropriate. Yeah. And that's something we think very hard about.
Yeah, yeah. What did I forget to ask you about, Galen? Any?
I don't, you know what? I can't think of anything. The only thing I would say is, hey, our company's on Twitter, Summa Silver.
Okay.
I'm on Twitter, at Galen McNamara, although I haven't been posting very much, recently. Sorry, my phone's ringing. I'm just going to say cancel that.
That's okay.
But no, I think we covered a lot here, Ron. Yeah, thanks very much. Let me just talk about what's coming up.
Sure.
We have an upcoming drill program in New Mexico that's scheduled to begin in mid-November. Like I was saying, testing some surgical targets that I have very high hope that they're successful. I think we have a good chance that they're going to be good. And then after that, we have to come back to Nevada and follow up on our new discoveries. So we're going to be very busy for the next year.
Yeah. I forgot to ask you, the company, how much debt does the company have?
We have no debt. And we're in a good cash position in that we've got about $7 million Canadian in working cap. So the way I like to describe that is that, like, that's a good war chest to go out and keep adding ounces and keep drilling big holes.
Absolutely. And another thing I forgot to touch on, uh, not just jurisdiction matters, but location matters. How would you qualify the accessibility of the projects? What comments would
You
you have
know,
on that?
I've worked in a lot of places, especially in remote places in Canada where you have to fly around everywhere. In Nevada, in Tonopah, we're right adjacent to the town of Tonopah on Highway 95, US Highway 95. And down in New Mexico, we're located in Catron County, but it's road access right to everywhere where we need to do our exploration holes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And I want to mention the stock is traded in Toronto with the symbol SSVR, and in the US on the over-the-counter market, SSVRF, correct?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. And can we count on having you back in a couple months so we can update the viewers on what's going on with the company?
Yes, absolutely. Let's do that. I don't know, sometime early in the new year. How about that?
That sounds great. Galen,
Sign
thank
me
you
up.
on behalf of all of our viewers. I appreciate you, sharing insights into your company, also kind of the overall silver market, and we'll look forward to talking to you again.
Of course. Thanks very much, Ron. Good talking to you too.
All right.